Don't take my picture. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. Since I'm a 20-year-old female from the UK, this happened to me, and it wasn't that surprising. About 2 years ago, I moved away for university around 2 hours from home. I was so scared and excited about the concept of moving, but also worried, since my parents were majorly overprotective, which I understandably, as the oldest child and only daughter, understood. Fast forward 3 months into my first year, and I'm walking into a nightclub with my friends, which is really fun up until the bouncers told me I had to take 15 minutes. My friends, being as great as per usual, decided to go in without me, and I sat on the benches next to the club. As I sat waiting and smiling away at the bouncers, a middle-aged man came and sat next to me, uncomfortably close. My thoughts told me something was not right. I made a gesture to the male bouncer, who was watching, to make him aware of my discomfort, to which he watched the man. While doing this, the guy had started to talk to me in a thick foreign accent, which I guess was more Eastern European. He grabbed out his phone and held it up and asked for my number. I declined and told him I was okay, to which he started to move closer to me. He then started loading up his camera and asking to take a picture of me. Before he could press on anything, I was covering my face and moving so it was blurred. "Don't take a picture of me," I shouted at him, and moved away as quick as I could. Alarm bells were ringing like crazy and I started to panic. The bouncer had clicked on and came over and grabbed the guy's phone. The next part still creeps me out. Looking through his phone, the bouncer saw a lot of pictures of girls, and I'm not sure of their condition, as he turned away quickly, and as he looked, a text came through to which the bouncer stared the man down, and this time the creep got up and ran as fast as he could. The bouncer tried to chase the guy but failed. However, he shouted to his workmate to phone the police, who was quick to do so. They handed over the phone and I had to hand in a statement. I'm always scared to think what may have happened if I've been really blacked out, or that bouncer hadn't have realized what was going on. So, creepy guy who wanted to take a picture of me and God knows what else. Let's not meet again. The night I stopped talking to strangers at bars. This is a mildly long one, as I am long-winded and detail-oriented. This was a traumatic encounter I had in May of 2012. It was a Saturday night, and I went out to a bar with friends. We were dancing and being obnoxious, of course, and this dude kept looking at us. I didn't pay him much mind. He was cute, but I was not in the mood to talk to some stranger. Anyways, the night progressed, and one of my friends gave him my number without my permission, by the way, and he and I are no longer friends due to his disregard for anyone but himself. So, dude texted me, okay? I responded politely, and we ended up having some decent conversations. We had a lot in common: movie taste, music taste, general witty banter. I'm including this so you understand why I chose to go out with a stranger. 2 weeks later, we met up at the same bar. We hung out, had some beers. He was drinking pretty excessively. My dad is an alcoholic, so that is always a red flag for me. He seemed to be handling himself well, though, and a few of my friends showed up for support and potential protection. A few hours into the date, he told me how pretty I am. Ah, I thought, that's always nice to hear. We were sitting out on deck, drinking and enjoying the evening. I hadn't yet realized my friends went in the bar, and no other patrons were outside. He didn't stop there, though. This dude leaned in close to my ear. I could feel the hot breath, and it was not a turn-on. I could smell the shitty Bud Light on his breath, mixed with garlic or something like that. Then he started whispering to me, "You remind me a lot of my ex." Ah, fuck, I thought. I'd already been losing interest in the situation, but that feeling was growing immensely. Then he continued, "I thought she was a spy, for the government. I used to have bad schizophrenia. Psychiatrists are bullshit, though, so I self-medicated with Oxycontin and shit like that." I pulled back, but he put his arms around my shoulders and pulled me back. I felt my ear knock against his teeth, and my whole body grew numb with fear. This was when I noticed we're alone. "I'm going to use the restroom," I said. I fucking needed out. Fight or flight kicked in, and he looked strong. "I'm not done," he said, squeezing tighter on my shoulders. "Just let me tell you this." I pushed my elbow against his ribs, casually but forcefully. I didn't want to escalate anything, but I need the fuck out. I really have to pee quick. I'll come right back. I put my other hand on the bench we were sitting on, using the force to try to propel me up. The fucker pulled me back down and fucking chuckled, like it was cute or something. "Sorry," he said. "Just stay. I have something important to tell you." I remember he started rubbing my arm, like he was trying to soothe me into complacency. So I screamed loud. "Let me go, stop, get off me!" I screamed words I hoped would alert that I wasn't a drunken loudmouth. "What the fuck? I seriously, like what?" he said. I remember the smell of garlic had gone away, and the alcohol was all I could smell. It triggered even more panic in me, as it was reminiscent of my father's alcoholic outbursts. "Ashley, Ashley!" I screamed for my best friend, and still no one came out. It was one of those patios that were fenced in, with a large, thick metal door to get back in the bar. There were no windows to see in the bar either. I still didn't struggle physically. I worked with individuals who had severe aggression and behavioral disorders, and have been trained to believe that the more you physically fight, the more it escalates. "The voices aren't that bad anymore. I medicate with alcohol now," he shouted. He didn't sound mad though. He seemed confused, like he didn't understand why I was so incredibly done with it. "My ex, she may have been a spy. I stabbed her by accident, kind of. She left me, and you look like her, and I like that, okay? I just care about you. I want to be with you," he said, his voice calm through that conversation. The smell of garlic came back, and I felt my body grow a little limp in resignation. And then the door opened. A loud clunk as the metal hit the brick. Laughter. Ashley's laughter. I looked up, and Ashley's laugh stopped, her body still. "Get the bouncer," I said, calmly again. "I'm so grateful. I de-escalated the situation. It probably saved me from instigating further." Dude let go of me quickly. "You're still a bitch," he said. "You're gonna rot." At that point, I stood and ran towards my friends. The four of us ran into the bar, right behind Ashley, who already had the bouncer with her at that moment. After I saw Ashley with the bouncer, I sat on a stool and fell apart. I was sobbing and shaking and heaving the whole time. At that moment, the bartender gave me so many napkins to blow my nose with, eventually giving me an entire stack of them. Everyone had heard about the situation, so nobody bothered me. My friend stayed with me that night. Everything was a huge blur after I got out of his grip at the bar. I don't remember talking to the bouncer or the owner, who banned him for life. I don't really remember writing the encounter in my journal or eating the entire pizza myself. The next day, I changed my phone number immediately. I avoid the area where that bar was located, and I don't really go out much at all. I went through the worst case scenarios, only escalated the anxiety from my encounter. The therapist helped a lot. So, dude from the bar, let's not meet for real. Dog sitting and gross abuse of free Wi-Fi. It's been long enough that I'm ready to tell the story. Last year I was dog sitting for my aunt. The dog is small, sweet, and a little skittish. I worked most of the week, so I was just living in the house for the time being. It's a nice house, not big enough to feel empty if you're alone, but not small enough to feel cramped. The only rooms I used were the kitchen, bathroom, living room, and the guest bedroom. My last day of work this particular week was a double shift. I was excited because after this, I had 2 days off. I plan on using them to introduce the dog to RuPaul's Drag Race. I usually try to keep good spirits for a double shift because regardless of the time and annoying customers, extra money is always needed. My old job was a barista and cashier. Mornings are always busy and nights are always slow on weekends. People are more concerned with coffee and breakfast than anything else we may have to offer. I was having a nice time actually, because this day was turning out to be not as hectic as the previous ones that week, one even involving a small fire. As the morning rush line was dwindling, the limited tables in the restaurant came into view and I started people watching. As I slowly scanned the customers eating bagels and reading the paper, my eyes met a man on a laptop. He had long, dirty hair and a bit of stubble. He stared at me with a little too much intensity. I wondered if he found my people watching rude, so I decided to clean and restock instead. It didn't take long for a line to reform, so I returned to my register. Once again, after the line died down, I could see a few tables in front. The man was still there and he was still staring at me. Every now and then he would look at his computer and then back at me. It almost felt like he was looking right through me, or like he could see every part of me. It felt so uncomfortable that I went and cleaned in the back of the restaurant out of his sight. After the next rush, I took my break and sat far away from the man. He was out of my sight, and I was out of his. When I came back from my break, the man was gone. My manager asked if I had interacted with him at all. I told her about him making eye contact with me, but that nothing else ever really happened. She told me that the man had been watching porn on his laptop, and she had asked him to leave. So that was weird enough. This man had been watching porn and staring at me. I really wish this is where the story stopped. Hours passed, and the rest of the day was entirely normal, despite me and a few female coworkers feeling a slight edge. We're in the process of closing, which is actually a process I really enjoy. We're well in, and I'm almost done with my assigned jobs when my manager comes up to me again. She informs me that the man had found his way back in the restaurant at some point, and she found him hiding in a back corner. She chased him up by threatening to call the police. She knew that earlier in the day, he seemed to be paying attention to me. She said I could finish up whatever I wanted or needed to, but afterwards she strongly advised me to get home as soon as possible. She also offered to walk me to my car. I took both offers and quickly got my things together and clocked out. My aunt's house was not far from work, and it was a 5-minute drive at most, which was helpful because then I didn't feel crippling anxiety for much longer. I got to the house, and after triple checking that I locked every door, got into my pajamas, but unsurprisingly, I was not ready to sleep yet. Now was the time to introduce the dog to RuPaul's Drag Race. I went into the living room. The living room consists of a couch, 2 chairs, a TV, a window, and the front door. Unfortunately, the porch light was broken and the window had no curtains. That had me a little stressed, but I was willing to take that over the only other TV in the house, which was the one that exists in the scary basement. Facing the basement TV, including having my back to a sliding glass door facing the very dark woods. No thanks. I was setting up the TV when the dog started growling. I really didn't think much of it. As I said, the dog is skittish, so he growls and barks all the time. I wasn't looking at him. I was muttering shush shush and figuring out how to work the TV. The dog didn't stop and started to get louder, so I finally put down the remote and turned to face the dog. I froze. The dog was barking at the window, and there was an outline of a man at the window. The exact same build as the one at the restaurant. I screamed, and luckily that was enough for the man to run away from the window. I stood there frozen for a while. The dog had calmed down, but I hardly felt safe. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a big knife, and did what any responsible adult would do, called for Mommy. She did not advise calling the police, and instead came and spent the night with me. I told my aunt. I spent the rest of my time dog-sitting, clutching the knife anytime I slept or took a shower. My aunt also gave me permission to have one friend stay with me every night. Nothing else ever happened. I never even saw the guy come into work again. A part of me wishes I knew who he was or where he went or what he wanted with me. I'm glad he was a coward, and that's all it took to scare him off. It was my screaming and my extra small dog. Alright, so let's not meet again, stalker porn guy who watches porn in a sandwich shop anyways, like, frig. I have been harassed for the past 6 months by an obsessive Uber driver. This story starts on a Thursday night in May 2017. I work in retail, and after a long shift one night, called an Uber home so I could avoid the dodgy people that hang around the train station. I wish I had known that the simple act of calling for transportation would lead to a 6-month-long ordeal of harassment and obsession. I got into the car and chatted with a middle-aged driver, who I'll call T. He had a strong Turkish accent and seemed friendly. The conversation was normal at first, with him asking where I worked and why I was out so late and what I was studying, etc. As the conversation progressed, he began to make comments that started to make me feel uncomfortable. He started to comment how pretty I was, and how young I looked, and how he missed the times when he was young and could get girls like me. He then put his hand on my knee and patted it affectionately, and tried to push my hair out of my face. I was very aware that he was controlling a moving vehicle, so I just ignored him and prayed that we would get to our destination quicker. When he pulled up to our place, he noticed a car was in the driveway, and immediately retracted his hand. He asked me if I wanted to go out for a coffee sometime. I politely declined, said that I had a partner. He told me he was a very lucky man, and that I could call him any time for a free ride. He then reached out and kissed my hand. I felt physically sick but thanked him for the ride, and got out as quickly as I could. As soon as I was inside, I told my boyfriend what happened, who encouraged me to report the driver. I was apprehensive at first, as he knew my address, but eventually reported it, as I knew we were moving soon. I was reassured by Uber that the matter would be investigated, and received a full refund for the trip. I didn't hear anything from T after that, and was soon busy into my study schedule working and moving house. I forgot about him until around August, where by chance I ran into him in our cafe. I was in line to get a coffee when he tapped me on the shoulder. My heart sank. He gave me a big smile and tried to give me a hug, which I declined. "Hey, I've missed your pretty face. Where have you been?" "I'm super busy. Sorry, I can't really talk," I spluttered. I ordered my coffee hastily and burst out the door with him hot on my tail. He started walking beside me, matching my pace. I was starting to breathe heavily and hyperventilating. "Hey, so I could have brought you that coffee. We still need to go on that coffee date." I told him no, I was not interested, and that he was making me uncomfortable. He then physically grabbed my hand as we were walking. I actually spluttered out, "What the fuck? What are you doing?" He replied, "Oh, is that too soon? Too soon? Too soon for what? We're not on a date. I'm not interested. Leave me alone." I said this loudly enough for people around me to hear me, and a few people had started to pay attention. "Oh, are you a lesbian or something?" "No, I'm just not interested in you." I was mortified. I'd officially lost it and started to cry. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you," he said, and he tried to pat my back. I physically flinched and walked away from him, close to having a mental breakdown. He called up behind me as I was leaving. "You still work at the place, right?" I realized then I had told him where I worked that night, and that picked me up and seen me in uniform. I had also told him where and what I studied. I couldn't believe my stupidity. I alerted my store manager, who then alerted shopping center security, who assured me that they would be, for sure, on the lookout. Sure enough, my first shift back after that cafe run-in, my manager told me that someone had come in, asking for my phone number, and when I was next on shift, claiming to be my boyfriend. My manager refused to give this information, and immediately notified security, but by the time they arrived, he had already left. They showed me the grainy center security footage of people coming into our store, and around that time, and sure enough, it was T. I was told that if he came in again to go hide out at the back, and that the other girls on shift would deal with him. A few months later, he tried to add me on Facebook. I immediately changed my name on Uber, so I couldn't be identified anymore. I have a pretty unique name and blocked him. The most recent incident happened in September last year. I was tidying the window display out the front of the store when I immediately felt like I was being watched. I looked to my left and sure enough, T was there. I pretended not to know him and said, "Can I help you, sir?" "Just admiring your beauty," he said with a smile. He then gave me an envelope and walked out before I could even say anything. Inside was a card saying that he really felt a connection and thanking me for my help today, even though I never served him, and a voucher for the local bikini store for $100. Anyways, I realize now is the time to involve the police, and I'm kicking myself for not contacting them in the first place. I haven't heard from him since, and praying that I don't ever hear from him again. Now, do I still involve the police, even though it's been a while since we've last made contact? I don't know. I watched it beg for its life before I slit its throat. This happened to me last night, and I'm left still feeling pretty uncomfortable about the whole exchange. Also not sure if this is the right sub, so I apologize if it doesn't belong. Before I jump into it, I'll give a little bit of background context. I work with a guy named Mike, who is 2 years older than me. Shortly after meeting Mike, he friended me on Facebook and I accepted, because I didn't want to avoid any awkwardness at work. I don't really use it often anyways. Mike would send me weird messages that were often out of the blue and unrelated, but nothing creepy or worthwhile. I figured he just wanted an excuse to talk, so I did my best to give him the hint that I wasn't interested, without being too rude by responding with one-word answers days later or not at all, and bringing up the fact that I have a boyfriend frequently, whenever he spoke to me both in person and online. It hadn't been a huge problem up until this point, just more of a mild annoyance that I mostly didn't think anything about. I also started to realize from my experiences with him at work that he may have an issue with social interactions, which led me to believe he was even more mild than I previously thought. He had a hard time picking up on sarcasm or body language, and usually starts conversations by bringing up the same topics over and over again. Most of our conversations in person involve him asking a series of questions that I answer out of politeness, followed by awkward silence. I usually feel forced to end by asking, "You?" Anyways, last night I was working, and he came to visit unprompted from a different floor later in the evening, when most of the residents were already in bed. We are both PCAs. He started up the same way. "Hey, have you seen any good movies lately? Do you like to drive fast? I've seen you speeding in your car after work. Do you drink? Do you go to the beach?" I was only half paying attention because I was doing paperwork, and tried to make it pretty clear with my body language and repeated what? Responses, that I wasn't too interested in continuing his interrogation. But then he asked me, "Have you ever killed a hog?" I thought I heard him wrong, so I asked again, "What?" And turned to look at him and he repeats, "Have you ever killed a hog?" I laugh a little awkwardly because it was unexpected and more than a little weird, and respond, "No." To which he just stands there smiling, and because it's so awkward, eventually I stupidly ask, "Have you?" Mike laughs and said simply, "Yes." This leaves me weirded out enough to ask, "Why?" To which he responds, "What do you mean? Why?" Me flabbergasted, "Why did you kill a hog, dude?" Mike laughs, me confused and desperate for context. "You just went out and killed a pig?" "No, it was for a function." I let an uncomfortable laugh of relief. But before things can go back to normal, he hits me with, "Yeah, I was the one that got to kill it. I got to see it beg for its life before I cut its throat." At this, I'm completely shocked, creeped out, and a little worried that no one else is around right now because I know him enough to know that he's not joking. "Why did you say it like that?" Mike laughs even though there is no humor in my response or voice, and repeats himself, "I watched it beg for its life before I slit its throat." I respond, "Dude, stop, seriously." Mike smiles and I pointedly ignore him now as I text my boyfriend because I'm pretty thoroughly disturbed. It's quiet for a few moments before he says, "Yeah, it took a long time to bleed out too. Much longer than the chicken I killed." I respond, "Mike, stop," and he says, "I thought you liked horror movies." I say as firmly as possible, "Yeah, I do, but this is creepy and you're making me uncomfortable." Mike continues to linger, repeating one of those same creepy statements every once in a while, but I am now fully ignoring him, since he has repeatedly disrespected my request for him to stop after I told him I was uncomfortable. Finally, he stops, and then again, out of the blue, "Do you have IG?" Even though I'm pissed, I'm more than a little relieved of the change of topic, and respond with a very rude and angry "Yup," to which he says, "Oh, cool," and then proceeds to go back to his floor. I wish that was the end of it, as if I was not freaked out enough. 10 minutes later, the phone at the desk rings, and I, thinking it's a resident's family member, as per usual, answers. But no, it's Mike calling from his floor, and he seriously asks me, "Do you want to go out and eat octopus later?" I'm completely done with this dude, because I'm angry and respond no, to which he says, "Okay, how about pork?" I tell him a resident needs me and hangs up, busy relaying the story to my boyfriend over text, when finally my coworker on my floor for the night makes an appearance. We are sitting together, but I refrain from telling him what just happened because he is a lot older, might think it's funny or misunderstand, and is friendly with Mike. But the phone rings again 10 minutes later, and I ask my coworker to answer the phone this time. It's Mike again. I can tell by the side of the conversation, I can hear that he was looking to speak to me again and ask about the residents. I said I needed help. My coworker doesn't know about the problem and jokingly tells him to come down and hang out with us. And before I can make any sort of gesture that says hell no, my coworker turns to me and says, "Mike wants to know your favorite type of wine so he can bring you some." This guy is relentless. I tell my coworker I don't want any, and he relays the message before hanging up a few seconds later. The phone rings again before we leave, but this time it thankfully isn't him. I'm a little worried about walking out to my car at this point because I am super uncomfortable, and he has already made it clear that he knows which car I drive, so I called my friend to talk to me. As I walked through the dark parking lot, it was 11 p.m., and my boyfriend's phone had died. But thankfully Mike does not make an appearance and I get home okay. Maybe it was an overreaction on my part, but the whole thing creeped me out, and I honestly pretty worried about the next time I will have to work with him.